Ambassador Glortak of the Zentari Confederation straightened his upper appendages and adjusted the universal translator pinned to what would be considered his collar, if Zentari had anything resembling shirts. His three eyes blinked in sequence as he prepared to enter the human diplomatic chamber on Space Station Harmony. "You look nervous," remarked his assistant, Pluvi. "It's just another negotiation with the humans. We've done this dozens of times." Glortak's skin rippled in what was the Zentari equivalent of a grimace. "That's precisely why I'm concerned. The last 3 meetings have gone poorly." "Define poorly," Pluvi said, tapping information into her data pad. "Well, the first one ended with Ambassador Jessica Thompson throwing her coffee mug against the wall. The second concluded with Ambassador Richard Garcia telling me to shove our trade proposal where the sun doesn't shine, which I still don't fully understand from an astronomical perspective. And the third? Let's just say I learned 17 new human obscenities in under 5 minutes." Pluvi's antennae twitched with amusement. "Perhaps you're just bad at your job?" "Thank you for that vote of confidence," Glortak replied dryly. "But I've analyzed the recordings. In all 3 cases, the humans were perfectly reasonable in previous meetings. Something changed. Something I'm missing." The door to the diplomatic chamber slid open to reveal Ambassador Tanya Wright, the newly appointed human representative. She had dark curly hair pulled back in a practical style and wore the standard blue and silver uniform of the Earth Diplomatic Corps. "Ambassador Glortak, right on time. Please come in." Her smile seemed genuine, which Glortak found encouraging. As they settled into their seats around the oval table, Glortak noticed something unusual on the human's desk. A small ceramic mug with the words "Not before my coffee" emblazoned on it. "Before we begin," Ambassador Wright said, "I should mention I've had an absolutely terrible morning. The artificial gravity in my quarters malfunctioned at 3 a.m. I've been awake since. My favorite mug broke. And the replicator is only producing coffee that tastes like burnt plastic." She took a sip from the replacement mug and winced. "See what I mean? Horrible." Glortak and Pluvi exchanged confused glances. "I appreciate your candor, Ambassador Wright," Glortak said carefully. "Would you prefer to reschedule our meeting?" Wright waved her hand dismissively. No, let's get this over with. I've reviewed your proposal for mining rights on Proxima Centauri B. What are your terms?" Glortak began his carefully prepared presentation. "The Zentari Confederation proposes a 50-year lease on the northern continent, with a 15% resource share allocated to Earth governments and—" 15%? Wright interrupted, her eyebrows shooting upward. "Your initial communication mentioned 25%. "Ah, yes," Glortak hurried to explain. "After consulting with our Economic Advisory Board, we determined that 15% would be more sustainable for—" The ambassador's coffee mug hit the table with a sharp crack. "So you decided to unilaterally change our preliminary agreement without consultation? That's not how partnerships work, Ambassador." Glortak felt his third heart begin to palpitate. This was beginning exactly like the previous disastrous meetings. "Perhaps," Pluvi interjected smoothly, "we could take a short recess? I noticed that the station's central garden has just received a shipment of Jovian orchids. They're quite remarkable, and the oxygen they produce has been shown to improve mood and cognitive function." Wright stared at Pluvi for a long moment, then let out a laugh. "You're trying to tell me I need to calm down, aren't you?" "With all due respect, Ambassador," Glortak said, "your species seems to exhibit significant emotional variability that impacts diplomatic proceedings. We're simply trying to optimize conditions for mutual benefit." Wright leaned back in her chair, a look of realization crossing her face. "Wait a minute. Are you suggesting that the reason our previous negotiations have gone sideways is because my predecessors were having bad days?" "The thought had occurred to us," Glortak admitted. The human ambassador burst into laughter, catching both Zentari off guard. Oh my God, you're absolutely right. Jessica had just gone through a divorce, Richard's dog had died the week before, and Marco was famous for his legendary caffeine withdrawal headaches. She wiped tears from her eyes. You poor aliens. No wonder you're confused. So humans make important decisions differently based on temporary biochemical and emotional states? Pluvy asked, clearly struggling with the concept. We try not to, but yeah, sometimes we do, Wright admitted. It's not our best quality. Look, you're right about the garden. Let's take 30 minutes. I'll grab a proper breakfast, and we'll reset. 20% resource share is my final offer, by the way. As they walked toward the garden, Glortak felt a peculiar mixture of relief and confusion. I've spent 3 standard cycles studying human diplomatic protocols, and nowhere was this bad day phenomenon mentioned. It seems, Pluvy observed thoughtfully, that we've discovered something the humans themselves don't fully acknowledge. This could be valuable intelligence. Indeed. We should document this immediately and share it with the Confederation, Glortak agreed. But first, let's ensure Ambassador Wright consumes adequate nutrition and experiences these mood-enhancing flowers. Do you think it applies to all humans or just diplomats? Pluvy wondered. An excellent question. Perhaps we need a broader study. Over the next several weeks, Glortak and his team compiled extensive data on human emotional variability and its impact on decision-making. They discreetly observed interactions across the space station, noting how seemingly minor incidents could drastically alter human behavior. Commander Lee spilled coffee on his uniform. 3 crew members were assigned extra shifts. Dr. Patel received a letter from home. All her research proposals were approved within an hour. Lieutenant Jackson missed a call from his partner. The entire security protocol for Deck C was rewritten to be unnecessarily complicated. The pattern was undeniable. Humans, despite their remarkable achievements in space travel, medicine, and technology, were astoundingly susceptible to emotional fluctuations. It's like they have no emotional regulation whatsoever, Pluvy remarked during their daily briefing. Not entirely accurate, Glortak corrected. They have regulation capabilities, but they're inconsistent in applying them. And what's more fascinating is that they seem largely unaware of the extent of this influence. Their breakthrough came when they observed the station's weekly administrative meeting. Captain Hernandez began by asking each department head about their weekend activities and personal matters before moving to official business. The correlation was unmistakable. Those who reported positive personal experiences received more resources and favorable decisions. That's it, Glortak exclaimed when they returned to their quarters. We need to implement a pre-negotiation assessment protocol. The next diplomatic summit between the Zentari Confederation and the Earth Alliance was scheduled for 3 weeks later. This time, Glortak arrived prepared with a new strategy. As the human delegation entered the conference room, Glortak's team was ready. They had prepared a refreshment table with actual brewed coffee, not replicated, fresh pastries from the station's best baker, and even a small display of personal photos that the human diplomats had mentioned in previous conversations. Ambassador Wright, how lovely to see you, Glortak greeted. Before we begin, I wanted to inquire about your recent shore leave on Mars. Did your niece enjoy the Olympus Mons tour you mentioned looking forward to? Wright looked momentarily surprised, then pleased. Why, yes, she absolutely loved it. Thank you for asking. And Ambassador Chen, has your daughter recovered from her soccer injury? She has, thank you. She's back on the field already. As they progressed through these seemingly casual inquiries, Pluvy was discreetly recording each human's response on a specially designed scale measuring emotional state. When the negotiations began, the Zentari delegation adjusted their approach based on this data. For those having good days, they presented the most ambitious proposals. For those showing signs of stress or negative emotions, they offered small concessions early or focused on less controversial topics. The results were remarkable. By the end of the day, they had secured a mining agreement that was 22% more favorable to the Zentari than their original target, along with 3 new trade routes and favorable terms for a scientific exchange program. As they were concluding, Ambassador Wright pulled Glortak aside. "I have to say, Ambassador, this is the smoothest negotiation we've ever had with your people. Something's different about your approach." Glortak's skin rippled in what humans might interpret as a smile. "Let's just say we've been studying human diplomatic customs more thoroughly." Wright narrowed her eyes. "You figured it out, didn't you? The whole catch us on a good day thing?" "I have no idea what you're referring to, Ambassador," Glortak replied innocently, all 3 eyes blinking in sequence. She laughed. "Well, whatever you're doing, it's working. But fair warning, we might catch on to your tactics." "I sincerely hope so," Glortak said. "It would make our jobs much easier if humans simply acknowledged when they're not in an optimal state for important decisions." "That'll be the day," Wright snorted. "We've only been trying to figure that out for about 5,000 years of civilization." As Glortak returned to his quarters that evening, he dictated his final notes on the new protocol. "Operation Good Day has proven remarkably effective. Recommend immediate implementation across all human diplomatic channels. Additionally, suggest expanding research to determine if similar emotional variability exists in other species." The final observation. Despite being aware of their emotional inconsistency, humans appear unable or unwilling to correct for it. This represents both a diplomatic opportunity and a significant danger. As human decisions affecting billions of lives appear subject to something as trivial as whether they've consumed adequate caffeine or received pleasant communications from their offspring. He paused, then added, "Personal note, I've scheduled my next meeting with Admiral Zarkox for immediately after his spawning ceremony, when his parental hormones will be at their peak. I expect our budget request will be approved without difficulty." Pluvi, who had been listening, let out a rare laugh. "You're becoming more human than you realize, Glortak." "Perish the thought," Glortak replied. "Now, let's prepare our report for the Confederation. This is going to change interstellar diplomacy forever." Little did Glortak know just how right he was, or how quickly word of the human mood variable would spread throughout the galactic community. Within months, every species with diplomatic ties to humanity would implement their own version of emotional assessment protocols, and humans, being humans, would remain largely oblivious to why alien negotiations suddenly became so peculiarly pleasant. News of the Zentari breakthrough spread through the galactic diplomatic community faster than a quantum encrypted transmission. Within 6 standard months, no fewer than 14 alien civilizations had implemented their own versions of what was now officially termed the Human Emotional Variability Protocol, or HFY for short. The Arcosian High Council created an elaborate pre-meeting ritual involving gifts carefully selected based on extensive surveillance of human personal preferences. The Pleiadian Union developed mood-detecting sensors disguised as decorative plants. The notoriously pragmatic Vexillians went so far as to schedule all human interactions exclusively between the hours of 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. Earth Standard Time, and having determined this was when humans were statistically most reasonable. Glortak found himself unexpectedly promoted to Chief Xenopsychological Strategist for the entire Zentari Confederation. His quarters on Space Station Harmony had been upgraded to a luxurious suite, and Pluvi now led a team of 12 assistants dedicated to monitoring human emotional patterns across all diplomatic channels. "You should be pleased," Pluvi remarked as they reviewed the latest data. "Your discovery has revolutionized interspecies relations. Human agreements with non-Earth entities have increased by 37%, with a 64% reduction in diplomatic incidents." Glortak's epidermis darkened in the Zentari equivalent of a blush. It was hardly a discovery, more of an observation of the painfully obvious. Obvious to us, perhaps. The Draxians still can't comprehend it. Their ambassador asked me yesterday if humans suffer from some sort of neurological disorder that prevents emotional consistency. And what did you tell him? That it's not a disorder but a feature. The same emotional plasticity that makes them unpredictable also makes them remarkably adaptable and creative. Pluvi's antennae twitched in amusement, though I'm not sure he believed me. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication ping. Glortak activated the holographic display to reveal the agitated face of Zentari Sub-Commander Trex. Glortak, we have a situation. The humans have scheduled an emergency meeting of the Galactic Council for tomorrow. What's the agenda? Glortak asked, immediately concerned. They won't say. But our intelligence suggests Trex lowered his voice dramatically. They know about the protocol. Glortak felt all three of his hearts skip simultaneously. Impossible. We've been extremely discreet. Apparently not discreet enough. The Arcosians gifted Ambassador Reyes a replica of her childhood home yesterday, complete with miniature figures of her long-deceased pet companions. Those idiots, Pluvi muttered. We specifically advised against obvious emotional manipulation. How bad is the human reaction? Glortak asked, dreading the answer. Trex's skin rippled anxiously. Unknown. But they've requested representatives from all species who've implemented HFY variants. The meeting is scheduled for 7 a.m. Earth Standard Time. 7 a.m.? Glortak nearly choked. That's barbaric. No human functions properly at that hour. Precisely, Trex said grimly. They're deliberately setting us up for failure. After Trex's communication ended, Glortak paced the room, all 6 limbs twitching with nervous energy. This is potentially catastrophic. If the humans feel manipulated, it could undo cycles of diplomatic progress. We need to prepare, Pluvi said practically. Let's review all possible human reactions and develop counter-strategies. They worked through the night, analyzing years of human behavioral data and crafting responses to every scenario they could imagine. By morning, Glortak felt as prepared as possible, though his exoskeleton itched with anxiety as he entered the council chamber. The circular room was already filled with representatives from across the galaxy, their nervous chatter creating a cacophony of clicks, whistles, and translated murmurs. Glortak noted with dismay that the human section was conspicuously empty. At precisely 7 a.m., the massive doors swung open, and the human delegation marched in. Leading them was Admiral Victoria Okafor, Earth's most decorated space fleet commander and renowned negotiator. Behind her walked representatives from every major Earth government, all wearing identical expressions that Glortak's training identified as smugly amused. Good morning, colleagues, Admiral Okafor greeted, her voice carrying effortlessly across the chamber. I understand it's inconvenient for many of you, particularly those species who require more than 4 hours of consciousness restart after sleep cycles. Several Malorian delegates grumbled audibly, their gelatinous forms still visibly sluggish. Let's get straight to the point, Okafor continued. It has come to our attention that many of you have been implementing what you call the Human Emotional Variability Protocol in your diplomatic interactions with us. A heavy silence fell over the room. Glortak felt his exoskeleton grow clammy. Now I could stand here and express outrage at being manipulated, Okafor said, walking slowly around the central podium. I could demand apologies and reparations. I could even suggest that such psychological tactics constitute a form of espionage. The Arcosian representative looked ready to melt into the floor. But instead, Okafor's serious expression suddenly broke into a broad grin. I'd like to congratulate you all. Confused murmurs rippled through the assembly. Excuse me? Glortak couldn't help blurting out. Okafor laughed. Ambassador Glortak, the mastermind himself. Please stand and take a bow. What you've accomplished is remarkable. Bewildered, Glortak rose to his appendages. I don't understand, Admiral. You're not angry? Angry? Quite the contrary. For the first time in human diplomatic history, we're being treated as we actually are, rather than as some idealized rational actors. Do you have any idea how refreshing that is? The Admiral gestured to her delegation, who began distributing data tablets to each representative. What you're receiving is Earth's official response to the HFY. We've analyzed its implementation across all diplomatic channels and found something fascinating. Not only have agreements increased by nearly 40%, but human satisfaction with those agreements has increased by 62%. Glortak blinked his 3 eyes in sequence, struggling to process this information. So you approve of being emotionally assessed before negotiations? Approve. We want to formalize it, Okafor declared. The proposal before you is for an official interspecies diplomatic preparation protocol. We're suggesting standardized pre-meeting assessments for all species, not just humans. Pluvi leaned toward Glortak. Is this a trick? The Admiral overheard. No trick, Assistant Pluvi. The truth is, humans have been informally doing this amongst ourselves for millennia. Why do you think we have so many social rituals before business meetings? All that small talk about families and weather isn't just politeness, it's emotional assessment. A Vexillian representative raised a tentacle. But our research indicates humans are uniquely emotionally variable. Other species don't require such protocols. With respect, Representative Zorn, that's nonsense, Okafor replied. Your species makes dramatically different decisions depending on your hibernation cycle. The Arcosians become impossibly stubborn during their 3rd moon phase. And let's not even start on the Malarians' mood fluctuations during their quantum bifurcation periods. Uncomfortable shuffling spread throughout the chamber as species recognized their own emotional inconsistencies. The difference, Okafor continued, isn't that humans are uniquely emotional. It's that we're the only ones honest enough to admit it. Glortak found himself unexpectedly moved by the Admiral's words. So what are you proposing exactly? A galactic standard for diplomatic preparation. Before any major negotiation, all parties complete a standardized assessment of their current biological, emotional, and environmental states. If conditions are suboptimal for any party, the meeting is rescheduled or adjusted accordingly. That's surprisingly sensible, Pluvi whispered. Additionally, Okafor added with a mischievous smile, we're proposing a ban on scheduling meetings before 9 a.m. in any species' primary circadian cycle. Some things are just uncivilized. This drew appreciative laughter from around the chamber, breaking the tension completely. The rest of the meeting proceeded with remarkable cooperation as the details of the new protocol were hammered out. Glortak found himself appointed co-chair of the implementation committee, alongside Admiral Okafor. As the session concluded, Okafor approached him privately. I wanted to thank you personally, Ambassador. Your work has forced a long overdue conversation about the reality of diplomatic interactions. I'm still somewhat stunned by your reaction, Glortak admitted. We were prepared for accusations of manipulation, not gratitude. Okafor laughed. Oh, there was plenty of that initially. The first reaction from most governments was outrage. But then our own xenopsychologists pointed out something interesting. Your methods weren't manipulative, they were accommodating. You weren't trying to exploit our emotions. You were working around them to find genuine common ground. That was indeed our intention, Glortak confirmed. Though I admit, we did use the information to secure more favorable terms in some negotiations. Of course you did. That's diplomacy. Okafor grinned. But here's what I find fascinating. Once we implemented our own version of your protocol internally, dealing with other human factions, our agreements improved by 53%. It turns out, we needed your outside perspective to improve our own interactions. As they walked together toward the reception area, Okafor added, there's an old human saying, never make important decisions when you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. We've known this wisdom for centuries, but somehow forgot to apply it to interstellar diplomacy. Curious, Glortak observed. If you already had this insight, why did it take an alien observation to implement it? Another human quirk, Okafor sighed. Sometimes we need an outsider to point out what should be obvious to us. We're simultaneously self-aware and blind to our own patterns. The reception that followed was the most relaxed interspecies gathering Glortak had ever attended. Representatives who normally maintained rigid formal distances were engaging in genuine conversation, some even discussing their own species' emotional quirks with surprising candor. "Look at that," Pluvi remarked, gesturing to where a Draxian and a Malorian were comparing notes on how seasonal changes affected their decision-making. "I never thought I'd see a Draxian admit to having emotions at all." "It seems we've started something much bigger than we intended," Glortak said. 6 months later, the Interspecies Diplomatic Preparation Protocol was fully implemented across the galactic community. Every diplomatic vessel and station was equipped with specialized assessment facilities, and negotiators of all species were trained in recognizing and accommodating various biological and emotional states. The results exceeded even the most optimistic projections. Diplomatic incidents decreased by 78%. Trade agreements increased by 42%. Even long-standing territorial disputes began finding peaceful resolutions. Glortak, now serving as the Zentari Ambassador at Large for Interspecies Relations, found himself addressing the inaugural graduating class of the new Galactic Diplomatic Academy. "The greatest revelation of my career," he told the diverse assembly of future diplomats, wasn't discovering the human emotional variability. It was realizing that acknowledging our limitations doesn't weaken us, it strengthens our ability to find true common ground. He paused, looking out at the eager faces before him, some with multiple eyes, some with none at all, some not even possessing what might be recognized as faces. The old model of diplomacy assumed that rational self-interest was the only legitimate basis for negotiation. We now know better. True diplomacy must account for the full spectrum of what makes each species unique, including our moods, our biological cycles, and yes, even whether we've had a satisfactory morning beverage. This drew appreciative laughter from the human contingent. So remember, before you enter any negotiation, ask yourself 3 questions. Is this the right time? Are all parties in an optimal state? And most importantly, has anyone had a bad day? As Glortak concluded his address to thunderous applause, he couldn't help reflecting on how far they'd come. What had begun as a simple observation about human unpredictability had transformed galactic diplomacy itself. Later that evening, as he shared a meal with Admiral Okafor and other dignitaries, he posed a question that had long puzzled him. "Admiral, there's something I still don't understand. When you discovered our protocol, you could have used it against us, caught us at our worst moments. Instead, you chose cooperation. Why?" Okafor smiled. "Because we recognize something profound in your approach, Glortak. You didn't try to eliminate emotions from diplomacy, you acknowledged them as valid factors. After centuries of being told to leave feelings at the door, someone finally said, 'Bring your feelings. But let's be aware of them.' That wasn't manipulation, it was honesty." Besides, she added with a wink, "We figured if we were going to be emotional anyway, we might as well get credit for it. Now we're not irrational, we're complex. It's all about branding." Glortak's skin rippled with amusement. "You humans truly are remarkable creatures." "So are Zentari," Okafor replied. "It takes a special kind of mind to see not just what is, but what could be." As the evening concluded, Glortak received an urgent message from Confederation headquarters. A new species had been discovered in the Sagittarius Arm, and first contact was imminent. The message ended with what would have once been an unusual request, but was now standard procedure. "Please advise on optimal timing based on both human and Zentari emotional cycles." Under no circumstances should first contact be attempted before adequate caffeine consumption by human representatives or during Zentari molting season. Glortak sent his approval with a feeling of profound satisfaction. The galaxy had finally learned the most important diplomatic lesson of all: never underestimate the importance of a good day.